Okay, welcome everyone. This is going to be attempt number 2 on this very special class today on the anniversary of October 7th, first anniversary. It's a painful day for the Jewish people, but a very deep day, a day of introspection. It's important to note this is our first class in the year 5785, and I hope that this will be a very inspiring and a very invigorating class. Although in the beginning we do have to talk a little bit about the some of the pain that we've experienced and its deep significance. But that's an opening up to take us to hopefully a very positive and exciting place. So today, being October 7th, the first, although in Judaism we commemorate on the Jewish calendar, which the calendar that is going to be in October 7th, Yortzeit, which means the day of the first year of on the Jewish calendar, is only going to be in 2 weeks. When we celebrate Sukkot and the end of Sukkot on Simchas Torah. However, there is significance to the secular date as well. That's when the world is paying attention. So, the Jewish people experienced one of the worst events in modern Jewish history. And probably a pretty significant event in all of Jewish history. Although there were, it's hard, when it comes to matters of life, we don't even measure. You can't measure. Oh, so many people, because one life is an entire world. However, and that's to God. To God, the significance of one life is the entire world. God created only one human being. So when the tragedy happens, when a person is, God forbid, murdered, that's an infinite tragedy. You can't set a price on it. So it's hard to say that, since a lot of people were murdered, it's worse. But it's each one is its own. To us, definitely it impacts us in a much deeper way. And especially since the tragedy that happened then was experienced kind of on live with us and the Jewish people and the entire world watching as it was unfolding, which kind of brings it into our consciousness and into our awareness. And we have footage and we have all that kind of stuff, which, thank God, we didn't have throughout history, so we were able to somewhat survive and stay normal. What we're exposed to in the last couple of years, really, we better have Moshiach come very soon before we're all going to be crazy from seeing so much sorrow and so much pain. It obviously begs the question, what's going on? And I don't have the answer, and no one has the answer. But what we do know is, without a question, is that this is related to the end of, like people call it, end times. It's not a good name. It's not end times. It's actually beginning of times. Because God created the world for the time of Moshiach. It's not an end time. It's end of the dark times. Let's call it a new thing. End of dark times. But the beginning of the bright times. But the transitioning of the end of the dark times to the times of the bright times, of the good times, has been predicted both in biblical prophecy and in rabbinic literature as a time of great pain and suffering for the world in general and for the Jewish people in particular. And really there were great, they're called Chevlei Moshiach, the birth pangs of Moshiach. The great rabbis and great tzaddikim, the great saintly, righteous people, defenders of Israel, the holy souls that came to the world to sweeten the judgments, the darkness of the world, have made all the attempt to try to alleviate, to try to minimize that this shouldn't happen, that the terrible destructive forces that are present in the world pre-Mashiach, at the time of the redemption, shouldn't be given permission to do what they want to do. And we know for sure that they have accomplished it, because if you look at the biblical description of what's going to happen, it talks about a tragedy of far greater magnitude even than October 7th, although it's hard to imagine something worse than that. Yet, in terms of numbers, it would seem like it was predicted that much worse would happen. So it seems like God, with his infinite mercy and with the kindness and the help of the great, great holy rabbis, and maybe the merits of the Jewish people, and God's overflowing compassion for Israel, although we couldn't avoid it completely, definitely did minimize. So when we know that it's related to a baby being born, when a woman, and I mentioned this many times, there's different types of pain. When someone is suffering, God forbid, horrific pain, and they're dying from a disease, and their family members are standing around them and they wince in agony, there's nothing to comfort. But when a woman is in labor and she's going to have a baby, there is a comfort in the background. Although there is pain, and although it could be at a point of where it evokes great compassion and pity, but we know what it's leading to. We know it's leading to a big mazel tov. That something great is happening for the world. So that kind of is, I know for the people who lost loved ones and those who were firsthand recipients of the horror, until Moshiach is here, there's no comfort. Until their dead are returned to life, there is no comfort. And for them, we pray that they should see their loved ones back. And I'm sure that those who passed away and those who perished, as part of the redemption process, God is going to bring them back quickly to witness the great celebration and the great joy and jubilation of the redemption. Also the same is with the hostages and the like. But the overall perspective that we need to have in order that we don't go crazy and be crushed by the sadness and by the hardship of, especially now, it's the first year anniversary where we are reliving this all. It helps so much to keep in perspective that all of this has been foretold already, and that we are living through the moments of the redemption, and that what we've witnessed and with God's help, all the darkness and all the suffering is behind us already. And where we're standing today is already on a new year, on new ground, hoping and waiting and excited for the great miracles that we are already seeing unfolding in front of our eyes. It's just that because we've endured so much, it can't happen. It needs to happen fast. Even when it's happening and it's going through and it's day by day, we're watching spectacular miracles, and that's going to be the subject of today's class. It still doesn't satisfy us because we can't anymore endure the process. We want already to be complete and revealed good without any more suffering. We want Moshiach to be completely revealed. Once Moshiach is completely revealed, which I hope to do in this class as well, my little part, when that is fully revealed and fully displayed for the entire world, there won't be any more pain and there won't be any suffering. Now, the event itself, I mentioned already in classes in the past year, from Rabbeinu Bachaya. You can look it up. This is just one of the sources. There's lots of sources to it. But one of the most explicit sources for the incredible, inexplainable anti-Semitism that's going to plague the world at the time of the redemption. One can read the last passage of Rabbeinu Bachaya, who is a great commentator on Chumash, on the book of Exodus. So in his last piece on Parshas Shemos, which is the first Torah portion in the book of Exodus, if you look at his last piece, he talks about the moments before Mashiach's revelation. He actually talks about the time that's in between revelation, because Mashiach comes in two spurts. He reveals himself, he's concealed, and he reveals himself again, according to Jewish tradition, which I will share with you soon. In between, sandwiched between those two revelations, comes a very dark period in which anti-Semitism, according to Rabbeinu Bachaya, will explode in the world like we've never seen before. And that is what we've been witnessing, because in addition to the horror of the attack of October 7th, the viciousness of it, the murderous nature of it, the fact that so many people in the world are standing by and applauding and supporting the terrorists and have came out on the side of evil, is mind-blowing. It just doesn't fit what we would expect of a modern world, a world that kind of has gone out of the dark ages, a world that has reached the point of sensitivity to human suffering. That for every bit of suffering all over the world, there is so much condemnation, there is so much, and people do care. I believe people genuinely do care. And yet, when it comes to Israel and the Jewish people, it's as if their suffering doesn't matter. The pain doesn't matter. And okay, and I can say, those people that will say, well, you know what, the Palestinians are also suffering, they're suffering in Gaza. I mean, obviously, Israel didn't start this. Israel did not call for this. We were attacked, and Israel is just doing whatever it takes to destroy those monsters who are promising to do it again. And if those monsters are hiding among civilians, Israel does what everybody knows this. What no army in the world goes through lengths and things that no other army in the world has ever done to try to do surgical procedures. But sometimes it's impossible, and there will be collateral damage. And it is painful, and our heart should bleed for those innocents, if innocent people are suffering. Although I question how many are innocent when candies are given out on the streets by women and children every time, and children are taught in their madrasas and in their schools from one of their little children that their greatest joy and jubilation is to see Jewish blood spilled. It's not in a vacuum that you have murderers who are able to walk into Jewish towns, into kibbutzim, and so on and so forth, and murder men, women, and children. The very men, women, and children that you have seen in the last couple of years by your borders serving as taxis and car service for those in Gaza that needed medical treatment for cancer. These people in the kibbutz, these are the most lefty Israelis that were the most caring and bent over backwards to assist and to help the frail, those that are in Gaza that needed medical assistance. And yet these very murderers came into those very homes. They knew the homes. Many of them were from workers who had work and got paid, and this was their jobs. This was where they earned their livelihood. And that's how they knew exactly which homes to attack, where people are living, where people are. It's astounding. Now, what kind of people can do that if they're not educated from when they're little children with a hatred that is inexplainable? And that's the story. So it's one thing, the people in Gaza. So you say, in the world's consciousness, people care about the suffering, care about the Gazans, care about that pain. But what doesn't make it, and therefore, okay, it would make sense. One can understand that you can accept the narrative of Palestinian suffering. Now, I'm not going to make the statement that every single person in Gaza is guilty. I'm not saying that. I know a lot are. I'm not going to say everybody. I'm sure there are some good people. And for those that are suffering as a result of that, it's not good. It's not good. But again, Israel is not the one that wants to hurt innocent people. But what is shocking is that the people in the world, thousands and thousands of people, come out to protest, come out to rally in support of the Palestinians on October 7th. What are you celebrating on October 7th? If you're celebrating, pick a day that you say that Israel, bombed or did something to the and hurt, you might say, innocent civilians on a day like that. Okay, and you feel that is something you should stand up for the innocent suffering. That can at least have some explanation to it, and that makes sense. But to come out on October 7th, the day in which 1,200 people were, and about 800 of them civilians, men, women, and children, where babies were thrown into burning ovens in front of their parents, babies alive, where limbs were ripped off people, where people were burnt alive. Men, women, and children were sadly burnt in homes alive and in cars alive and butchered indiscriminately. So what are you celebrating? You're celebrating that? What kind of monster are you? How is that possible? And the answer is all of this doesn't make any sense. It's pure Jew hatred. But the fact that it's by millions of people across the world, why would you hate the Jewish people so much? There's no rationale over here. There's no explanation. But when we understand the context of when this happened, it's happening right now. Right, like Rabbeinu Bachaya says, it's going to happen right before the coming of Moshiach. Subconsciously, we can understand what's driving it. The stocks of the Jewish people are about to rise. Israel is about to rise to the highest peaks of honor, respect, and admiration. Israel is going to be the envy of the entire world. Her glory will shine. Her popularity will be infinite. Now let's understand this. The great elevation of the Jewish people in Messianic times is not just for the Jewish people, because the Jewish people are meant to elevate all of the human race. The Jewish people are bringing all of humanity into the ultimate utopian time, the ultimate enlightenment, a time of infinite blessing, a time when there won't be any more death, a time there won't be any more illness, there won't be any hunger, there won't be any, and most of all ignorance will be God, and all of mankind will know God intimately. The world will be experiencing unimaginable goodness, and the Jewish people will be at the heart of that download, of that flow of godly revelation for all of humanity. So those Gentiles in the world that are sensitive, that have a certain spiritual purity in their souls, are actually supporting the Jewish people and are painting their pain and supporting Israel. And there's so many of them. You look online, you see people from India, from Iran even, from all over the world, from Indonesia. You have people, sometimes you can look at anti-Semitic websites in which you see horrible comments. But when you look, you see so many people from across the world in full support of Israel. And it's beautiful. But there's so many millions of people that are on the other side. And the only explanation to that is that there's something that is being sensed. The world is feeling the Jewish people. The sages tell us that, the Torah was given at Mount Sinai. And the sages tell us that why is Sinai called Sinai? What's the reason for that name? Initially, the mountain is called Mount Chorev. That's the first time it's mentioned. But over here it's called Sinai. That's the English name, Sinai. What's Sinai? The sages say that the word Sinai is from the word in Hebrew, which is sinah. Sinah means hatred. Sages tell us that when God gave the Torah to the Jewish people, by the event of the Ten Commandments, when God spoke to Israel, God chose the Jewish people as his people to be a light unto the nations, to be his priests, to be his holy people. That cost the Jewish people, it came at an enormous price. The price of it is the hatred. That from that day and onward, it invited a super rational hatred against Israel, against the Jewish people. And that's true throughout history. But it becomes amplified, magnified, multiplied seconds before the great conclusion. When we wrap it all up and we bring it all to its conclusion, the world becomes very, very conscious of the Jewish people, very aware. If we measure based on percentage-wise the amount of how many Jews there are in the world, how few we are amongst the millions and billions of people in the world. We're not even, I don't think we're, maybe 1%? I don't think so. No, less than 1%. Point something. Of 8 billion people. What is there, 50? It's less than 20 million Jews, or about 20 million Jews. The amount of talk that the Jewish people are occupying in the consciousness, in the headspace of humanity is not to believe. Especially the last couple of years, but the last year, it's nonstop. There's not a day that the discussion is not about Israel. You know, the elections that are coming up in the United States, the most powerful country, the most influential country that is deciding, that really is the leader of the entire world. So the elections, the issue, the primary issues that are being spoken about. Again, I haven't paid so much attention. I haven't been following, but from the little bit I've picked up, it seems to be 4 primary issues. There's a big one is abortion rights. The other one is the border, immigration. The other one is the economy. And the other one is Israel. It's like amazing. And this is like front row and center. It's because we're living at the time of Moshiach. And the Jews are at the nucleus of everything that's happening in the world. God shoved us into the middle of it all. And things are evolving around Israel. So, the dark times, the difficult moments, the labor pains that we've had this year, with God's help, is behind us. What are we witnessing now? What we are witnessing now is something really astounding. The last couple of weeks, and what's really interesting is that the last couple of weeks, this is like leading up to, in the last 2-3 weeks, leading up to the new year. We just began a new year, 5785 on Rosh Hashanah. What was it, October 3rd? The new year began. So what we watched is in the last 2-3 weeks before that, the tides have turned for Israel and for the Jewish people in the most miraculous, stunning way that is baffling the minds of military people, baffling the mind of every observer who is watching. You have to say that God himself is intervening to help his children. And if you came to that conclusion, well, it's not too far. It shouldn't surprise you, because the Torah gives that prediction. And not somewhere in the Torah that is maybe far from us, but something we just read this past Shabbat, this past Shabbos, in all shuls. It's the Torah portion of the week, of this past week. Parshat Hazinu. Parshat Hazinu is the parsha when Moses, the greatest person ever, till Moshiach, who brings the word of God to the world, the most notable prophet of all prophets. All monotheistic belief systems, Christianity, Islam, the super religions of the world all acknowledge Moses. Moses, before he passed away, on the day of his passing, speaks to the Jewish people and does something astounding. As a human being, he calls the heaven and the earth. You have to imagine a human being who can talk to the heaven and talk to the earth. And he tells them, listen. And heaven and earth stood silently and listened. Moshe appoints them as witnesses. And in that witnesses he tells them to testify and bear witness to what he's going to warn the Jewish people and lay out the drama, the saga of Israel, of what is going to happen, our story. The gist of it is, God chose the Jewish people, built them up from infancy when they were nobody. God constructed them, strengthened them, built them up, brought them to the land of Israel, established them as a powerful nation, bestowed upon them the greatest blessings. As we know, in the days of King Solomon, Israel was the most prosperous country, and its blessings was off the charts. And yet Moses predicts that the Jewish people will turn their backs on God. They will sin. And God will get angry at them. They will evoke God's wrath, and Hashem will scatter them amongst the nations. And during the time that they will be scattered amongst the nations will treat the Jewish people very poorly, persecute them, and bring upon them all types of suffering. And that is obviously what happened in the last close to 2,000 years. But then there's the very end of that song. And this is all a song. This is the song of the heaven and the earth. Because the heaven and the earth remember the song that Moses sang. It's God's testimony where God appointed them to be the bear witnesses. This is the story that's embedded in the heavens and in the earth. The entire world is watching Israel, watching the story unfold of God's people. And what does it say? In the end, when God will notice and will see that the suffering of his people has reached such a point, and there is no one amongst the nations that are coming to assist Israel and the Jewish people, everybody will throw the Jewish people under the bus. Now, I have to say there are so many sympathizers, as we mentioned earlier, that have care and love Israel and love the Jewish people. But amongst the powers of the world, who has lent a hand? Yes, the United States has given money to Israel, but with so many restrictions, so many times putting conditions, not letting Israel fight this war like they need to fight this war. I don't know if Gentiles understand this, and I think they don't. But every single time we turn on the news and we see on one of the Jewish publications, cleared for publication, another soldier that has died today in Gaza. Another soldier. 8 soldiers died before Rosh Hashanah in southern Lebanon. It's another tie. It's literally a dagger in the heart of every single Jew across the world. And this doesn't stop. It happened again and again. And that's because Israel has to be so careful not to upset anybody. And they're fighting this war so delicately and carefully. But it's costing them their death of their boys. These boys are brothers, they're fathers, they're leaving behind orphans, they're leaving behind, many of them are engaged to get married, they're leaving behind bleeding hearts. The heart goes out, and they're boys and they're girls. It's just, it's indescribable, the pain. And instead of the world saying to Israel, you were attacked like no other modern country was attacked, with such viciousness, with such a bloodthirsty mob, and you're surrounded by millions of people that want to take you down, by Hezbollah, by the Houthis, by Hamas, by Iran, by Iraq, by Syria, by everybody that if they would have the opportunity would flood, by Egypt too, as we shall soon see. That if they would have the opportunity would come swarming into your country and do to every single Jew that's in the land of Israel exactly what they did to the poor people of October 7th. And Israel is trying to just live in peace, to secure its own borders, instead of the rest of the world standing by in full support, in full strength, giving all the power to Israel to do what they need to do. This foolish President Macron of France says 2 days ago that that we should put a arms embargo on Israel so that they don't do what they're doing to people in Gaza. And the same is the new prime minister in England, and other clowns, and even the Biden administration that has said all kinds of things, and of restraints and this, demanding ceasefire when there's no one to make peace with. It's insane. And what's amazing is that God speaks about this. And God says, at a certain point, when I see that no one is helping my people, my wrath will turn on the nations. And there's a verse in last week's Torah portion that says, Ashkir chitzai my dam, my arrows will become drunk from blood. Midam cholol, from the blood of the corpses, from those that they've killed, those that they've massacred. God looks at the pictures of October 7th every single day. I can't look at it. I have to admit, I've looked too much. And it scarred me in such a deep way. But God looks at these pictures. He does not forget those innocent that were butchered. But he says, from the blood of the chalal, from those that were massacred, fishivya, and those that were taken into captivity. God sees and pains the pains of the hostages in the tunnels of Gaza that have been abused in the most vicious way for the past year. God speaks about it, the shivya. It's interesting. Maybe for 1,000 years, we haven't really known a case where there were Jewish hostages. At least not on such a, in such a manner. It's as if God is literally speaking about October 7th in this last week's Torah portion. And God says, this will kindle my anger. And especially when I see that there's no one there assisting Israel, assisting the Jewish people. And just like it is in the Chumash, Parshas Hazinu, the same is also in Isaiah chapter 63. The Haftorah we read, this is the Torah portion, the portion of prophets that we read a week before Rosh Hashanah. Isaiah chapter 62 and chapter 63, but primarily chapter 63. The verse says, Mi zeh bama Edom, who is the one who is coming from Edom? Edom is Rome. That is referring to the end of exile. This is called the Roman exile because it began with the Romans. But as the sages tell us, there will be many nations that will join the Romans, including the Arabs, to persecute, to harm, to hurt, to squeeze Israel at the last moments. And it says, who is coming back from Edom? Chametz begadim, with blood-splattered clothing. Mi Batzra, coming back from Batzra, that's somewhere in Syria over there in Iraq. Zahadir bilavushay. This is God, splendored in his clothing, but now he got his clothing dirty. And God says, it's I, Ani medaber b'tzedakah, I am speaking with righteousness. Rav lo ishia, abundant to save. I've come to save my children. And whoever it is that's asking, it's going to be a question. The world will be astounded. And the world will say, Madua adam l'v'shecha, why are your garments red? U'bagadecha kedoirech begas, and your garments are like a person who's been working in a wine press. And God answers, Pura darachti, I am crushing. I am pressing down. Levadi, alone. You know why? You know why God says I'm doing this myself? Ume'amim ein ish. And from the nations and the UN, no one is joining me. Because no one is stepping up. Ein ish iti, no one is with me. The edrechem ba'api, so with my wrath I will crush them. The ermesem, and I will flatten them. B'chamasi, with my anger, with my wrath. The yez nitzcham al begadi, and their eternity, which means their prosperity, will be splattered on my clothing. The chol melbushai, and God says, and my garments, egalti, I've gotten it filthy. What does this mean? It seems that God will be doing things that won't look pretty to the evil forces in the world. And here is the verse that I felt was so important to share before we continue. Ki yoim nakam belibi. God says the day of vengeance is in my heart. God says, I've been waiting. When I watched you suffer for thousands of years, through the Crusaders, through the Roman savagery, through the pogroms in Russia, through the Nazi Holocaust, when I've watched, and through the intifadas, and the buses that would exploded in the early in the early 2000s, and the pizza parlors, pizza restaurants, and other places that were blown up in Tel Aviv, in Jerusalem, during the Intifadas, when I've seen all that pain and all that suffering, the vengeance was burning in my heart, God says. But you know when I'm going to release that anger? Ushnas ge'ulai ba, when the year of redemption arrives. And this is what gave me chills. To see this year right before the beginning of the new year, a sudden turn where the enemies of Hashem, the enemies of the Jewish people, don't know where to run to keep themselves safe. Because bunkers that are 14 stories beneath the ground are not deep enough to keep them safe from the Israeli missiles that have been hitting them, from the bunker buster bombs that Israel has been coming after them. Which, by the way, is just an absolute miracle. The absolute miracle is that Israel had the courage to do this. That's the miracle. That God strengthened the heart of Netanyahu to go ahead and do this, because God is doing it. Netanyahu is just a puppet. The IDF is just a force that Hashem is working through, because angels are supporting the F-15s that are coming out and bombing away at Hezbollah, exploding their pagers, exploding their walkie-talkies. It's not just the brilliance of the Mossad. It's divine wisdom. It's divine assistance. God planted this idea, the capabilities, and God is an active participant in what's taking place. And Iran, they know they're on the watch. Khomeini is hiding. Khomani, as they call him. What's his name? Yeah, Khomeini was the old guy. Khomani is not sleeping now. I promise you he doesn't sleep at night. He's terrified. When will all this happen? And I think it's just the beginning. Shnas ge'ulai bo, when the year of redemption arrives. And again, God reiterates, you know why I'm doing it? I'm acting alone. The abed, because I'm looking around, ve'ein oizer. God says, I see no one is assisting. The eshtoimem, God says, I'm bewildered. Ve'ein saimech, because there's no one supporting. God says, because there's no one supporting, it bewilders me. And therefore I have no choice, God says. Vatoishal Izra'i, my own hand is going to have to be activated. V'chamasi hisamachasni, and my rage is what's supporting me. So we are living in biblical times. We are living through biblical prophecy. We are seeing the most spectacular things happening. So we had October 7th. We had a very dark year. But the tide is turning. And the miracles are starting. And Moshiach is on the roll. Boy, oh boy. So here we have to fasten our seatbelts. And come along for the ride. But it's not just about watching this happening and celebrating. It's about doing our part. It's about being more Moshiach ourselves, connecting ourselves to our deepest, inner, holiest, godliest selves, recognizing that as Mashiach energy is revealing itself in this world, collectively, on the global scale, it has to happen individually in our own hearts. We shouldn't tolerate lies inside our own body, in our own world. We shouldn't fall for deception anymore in our own selves or our own evil inclination. The Nasrallahs that are inside our own heart, the Khomanis that are in our own heart, the liars, the Macrons, or the UN, whatever, Guterres, or whatever, these villains that are in our own heart that keep on lying to us, and the deceptions, we need to eradicate them as well and know that we have the power to destroy them. We have the power to live godly, holy lives. We have the power to be selfless now, to live with caring, with love, with true sensitivity, to pray like we've never prayed before, to connect like we've never connected before, to love like we've never loved before, to have compassion like we've never had compassion before. Because Moshiach is parting the curtains. The veils are moving aside. So I'd like to bring you back to an amazing, and the timing is absolutely spectacular. A couple of months ago, there was a class that I've given that discussed a star arising in this year. We discussed about a prediction about the star being visible. So there's a verse that speaks about Mashiach in Numbers chapter whatever, in Parshas Balak. I'm not sure which chapter. Oh yeah, I can tell you which chapter it is. It is Nope, it doesn't say over here. I thought it says. Okay. It's in the book of Numbers in Parshas Balak. In the end, there's a verse that says, Arenu v'layata, I see it and it's not now. Ashurenu, I behold, I have a vision. Bilam, the non-Jewish prophet, sees. He's looking across time as a prophet. He can see across thousands of years. He sees the vision of Moshiach. And he says, I see a star rising from Jacob, which is referring to Messiah, Moshiach himself. The Kam Shevet, and a ruling power will get up from Israel. And he will rule the world. He will kill the princes. He will smite the princes, the Moabite princes, whoever they are today. I don't know who they are. A lot of the guys you see in the news. The Karkar Kol B'nai Sheis, and he will uproot all children of Seth, which is all of humanity, uproot their indifference to holiness and godliness, and root them in divine consciousness, as explained by the Rebbe. That's the meaning of a karkar. He will uproot, completely metamorphosize humanity, and bring us all into a state of utopian goodness and light. But the Zohar takes it very literally. When the Zohar says a star will rise, so the Zohar describes a celestial event, a event that's going to take place in the sky, that there will be a star that will be visible, that will be literally at the onset of when Moshiach is about to come. There is going to be a vision. The world will see a star. Now we know that there is people that are always looking at the skies, and astronomers, stargazers, and looking for these how do they call it, astrological events. I don't know what they call it, astrological. I don't know what they call it. They have a name for it, where they're looking up, right? And there are people that are always, right? So one of the things that they were talking about is this September, that there is September and October, that there is going to be a comet. And it's not just that it's going to be, but it actually appeared already. It's called Comet 83. A3, I mean. The full name of the comet, let me tell you. Let me give you the full name of it as they named it. It's called Comet C 2023 A3. Tsuchinchan Atlas. You can look it up. That's the name of the comet. So they're talking about this comet that was supposed to be visible on September 27th. And it's going to be visible for quite a while. It's going to first make its, these are new words that I found today. I'm probably not pronouncing this already. Correctly, perihelion, which means the comet will go the closest to the sun, and exactly then I guess it's the brightest, or it's the dark. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but the perihelion of this star was actually on September 27th. So this is a star event. So I want to share with you something really, really interesting. So there's a Zohar. So the Zohar talks. The Zohar is the primary book of Jewish mysticism, written close to 2,000 years ago. So it says over there that the Zohar says that some of what Bilam was speaking about is going to be fulfilled in the days of Mashiach. And what is that? It says over there that God is going to, I'm going to read it just in English. I'm not reading the Hebrew because it's going to take us too long, or the Aramaic. Zohar is written in Aramaic. I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to read the English translation. That God is going to build the city of Jerusalem. And he's going to show a certain star in the sky that's going to sparkle with 70 paths. I guess in like a comet that has like a tail that runs across the sky. So there's going to be paths 70. And 70, it will shoot off like 70 sparks around it. And and it will, I'm sorry, I said I'm not going to read it in Aramaic, so I'm going to try to avoid that. And it's going to absorb 70 other stars, whatever that means. Okay, I can't say that everything that the Zohar is talking about is actually taking place, but there are some striking statements of the Zohar which are really chilling when we hear what the Zohar says. And the Zohar says this star is going to suddenly appear and it's going to be shining for 70 days. And when is it going to appear for the first time? This is the most telling part of the statement of the Zohar, that on the seventh day, it's going to be, which is meaning on a Sabbath, will be Yom Shvi on a Sabbath. Now, if you might look in Zohar, there are two versions of the Zohar. In one version it says on a Friday, and another version it says on the Shabbos. So according to the Girsa of the Nefesh David, this is the book that I'm reading over here from, it's called Zohar HaGeula. This wasn't printed this year, so the person who wrote this what's it called again, a version of the Zohar, who gives this particular version, Nusach, did not pop up to write it this year after he heard the news and he read what NASA is predicting. This book was printed already more than 50. This particular book that I'm reading from was printed about 15, 16 years ago when there was no predictions about comets. Anyways, his version is that it's going to happen on a Shabbos, on a Saturday. When Saturday is going to fall out on the 25th day of the 6th month. Now, the 6th month of the year is the month of Elul. The Hebrew calendar starts in Nisan, so the 6th month of the year is the month of Elul. It's going to appear on the 25th day of the month of Elul, which falls out on a Shabbos, which means on a Saturday. Well, that doesn't happen frequently. It could happen. It happens sometimes, maybe once, 10, 20 years. This year was one of those years that the 25th day fell out on a Shabbos. And guess which day it was? September 27th, when this new star, A3, was seen in the sky. And then it says being that it's going to last for 70 days, it's going to kind of conclude on the 6th day and the end, on a Friday and the end of 60 days, which comes out on the 5th day of the month of Kislev this year, which is going to be on a Friday. So it's actually starting on a Shabbos, on a Saturday, ending on a Friday. This star event. But the first day that it's going to be seen, the first day that it's going to be seen over a city of Rome. And on that day, it will fall 3 big walls from that city of Rome is going to come crashing down. And a big edifice, a huge palace or something, a big chamber, will fall. Vishalita dahikarta yamus, and the ruler of that city will die. And that now doesn't say that the ruler will die in that collapse, but that's probably the implication. That a big walls, mighty buildings will fall, 3 and then a chamber, and the ruler of the city will die on the first day that it will be seen. So I spoke about the Zohar a couple of months ago. If you remember, I don't remember. I should have looked up before I gave this class the name of that class, but we called it the Star of whatever. You can look it up in the YouTube. And I said, I wonder what's going to happen on September 27th, because I already made mention of the Zohar a couple of months ago. I said this is interesting because the Zohar is giving some interesting prediction. And it wasn't my discovery. I don't know the name of the person who sent it to me, who was all excited about it, sent it to me, and I said, wow. And I looked up the Zohar and I shared it with you. I said, what's going to happen September 27th? Well, you remember the day that Netanyahu came to the UN and gave a speech and looked the entire world in the eye and said that Israel is not going to be a coward anymore and Israel is winning? Do you know that when Netanyahu concluded that speech, that's when the F-15s took off from Israeli bases and flew right over Beirut and did one of the most stunning things ever. Dropped 81 bombs on the building. Now, if you look, I think according to, there were 6 buildings. And the way the buildings were structured, the way I saw it, from a 3D replica that was kind of put out by some Arabian, so I couldn't verify this exactly, but it seems like it was a complex that had 6 buildings, but the 6 buildings were 2, 2, and 2. Which would fit very interesting, which what the Zohar says, 3 shurin, 3 rows will come down. And a big chamber will fall. And the ruler of that city will die. Everybody knows that the most feared person in all of Lebanon is Nasrallah. Hezbollah had full control over Lebanon against the will of good Lebanese people. They have been wreaking havoc on Lebanon and causing so much suffering since the 1980s, Hezbollah. These murderous terrorists. And Israel came and took them out. Exactly that night. It was in Lebanon, it was the night, it was in the evening. And guess what Nasrallah was doing? Sitting in a meeting and watching Netanyahu's speech. It's the last thing he did in his life is watching the Jew talk. And then bang! So let me take you to something else we discussed this year. One of the classes I gave this year, for those of you who want to look back into our YouTubes, and this is not my chiddush that I'm sharing with you because you might have heard it before, but I think it's absolutely astounding. I gave you a little bit of the war of Gog and Magog. I gave a class on Gog and Magog. And I've also given a class on Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben David. So when we spoke about those, it was in March. I think in late February or in March is when we gave those classes. Both those classes were left unfinished. I really feel like I didn't complete the subject. I spoke only the beginning of it, and I didn't take it to the very end, and I still regret it. But Bez Hashem, maybe we'll get a chance to finish it. Maybe Mashiach will be here fully revealed before we don't even have to do that. But in one of those classes, I've discussed to you about an interesting figure who's called Armilos. I mentioned to you then that this figure who's going to be the leader of the war against the Jewish people, terrorize Israel before Mashiach comes, his name is going to be Armilos. And he is this super figure, formidable, undefeatable being. And remember, I even shared with you what Reb Sadia Goyen, I think, says. If I remember, it was Reb Sadia Goyen, who says that from the figure of Armilos came the Christian idea of an antichrist. He says that the Romans also have, the Christians, he says they also have that idea which they stole from the Jewish people. That there is someone who's here before Mashiach comes and tries to stop the redemption from happening. See, he writes in there literally the words anti, that the Christians call it anti, whatever. So this is an Armilos figure. But in the end, Armilos will be killed. And that's going to be one of the major moments clearing the world for Mashiach's revelation. It's not exactly sure who will kill Armilos, because officially, according to one possibility of what we discussed then, is that there are 2 Mashiachs. One is Mashiach ben Yosef, and one is Mashiach ben David. Armilos kills Mashiach ben Yosef. He is successful in slaying the first Mashiach, Mashiach ben Yosef, and then Mashiach ben David comes and takes down and kills Armilos and wins the battle and builds the holy temple and whatever. We were going through a lot of those details back then. But I discussed with you that many of the sources say that Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David do not have to be 2 people. It can be 1 person, 2 stages in Mashiach. We literally got to that point. I didn't really finish that class. But one thing is for sure, that there is a very nasty guy called Armilos. It's very interesting, and I'm not the one who came up with this, but some rabbis in Israel who figured this out, that the name Nasrallah, who has been a formidable threat to Israel, one of the Iranian proxies, threatening Israel for all these years, his name Nasrallah is the exact numeric value, gematria, of the word Armilos. I didn't trust it, because I never trust what I see. I went and I did the math myself. And I did the math over here. I wrote them down. I spelled out the word Armilus. Aleph, Reish, Mem, Yud, Lamed, Vav, Samach. Its numeric value is 347. We wrote out the word Nasrallah. Now, if you look online, the way the Israeli Google in Hebrew spells Nasrallah is with 2 lameds. Nasrallah. I don't know why it needs 2 lameds. It's only one sound la. They put 2 lameds. So you have to take away one of those lameds to get this number. Because if you add the second lamed, you'll have 30 extra. But you take away that lamed. You spell his name Nas Nun Aleph Samach, the way it sounds. Nun Aleph Samach, Reish Aleph Lamed Hey. Nasra, the 2 times you hear the ah. Nasrallah, the 2 alephs. Guess what? The numeric value is exactly 347. So let's for a moment stop for a moment. So the Zohar says that on the day that the star, the Zohar is talking about an event that's going to happen. Now, if the Zohar is referring to this year, it just might be. No. The Zohar is saying that on the 25th day of Elul, a star will be seen in the sky. It's a sign from God, the onset of the redemption. And on that day, a big city of Rome. Now, I know Beirut is not Rome, but Rome represents in Jewish idea the forces that destroy that destroy the temple, that don't want the rebuilding of the temple. Nasrallah is the head of the Quds, or those who are El Quds. El Quds is all about Jerusalem, to stop the Jewish people from building their temple in Jerusalem. That's what Nasrallah stands for. Him and the El Quds in Iran and Hamas and all of them, they're fighting this battle to stop Moshiach from coming. So the Zohar says this ruler will die. Now the fact that, let's just for a moment stop for a second, because it's important to understand the magnitude of the miracle that happened when Nasrallah was taken out. Because it didn't just start with Nasrallah. You know, in order to get Nasrallah, there was a string of events that happened. It all started when Netanyahu decided or said that it's time to bring, Hamas was already kind of mostly obliterated. They're still making trouble. They still sent rockets today into Israel. So they still need to be dealt with. But Hezbollah in the north, they were the real danger. It was estimated that they have about 200,000 missiles. You know, these 200,000 missiles when you're right next door to Israel. Imagine if Mexico would start sending 200,000 missiles into California. And Israel is not the size of California. Israel is not even the size of New Jersey. And their range of their missiles that they had can go over 300 miles. Many of them. And they would be firing indiscriminately. Okay, so Israel, first of all, it's the biggest miracle that Israel's got the Iron Dome. Israel's got the David slings. Israel's got the third one, I forgot what they call it. 3 amazing missile defense systems. That's a God-given miracle. There's no other country in the world that is defended like that. But there is no way that Hezbollah would be shooting thousands of rockets that Israel's defense system would be able to take them all out. That's if Hezbollah was in a state of readiness, in a position where their missiles were locked and loaded. However, here's the miracle. You know, Iran as well was always protecting themselves from Israel with the Hezbollah. That was Iran's first line of defense. Because they knew one thing. As they're working on building their nukes with the intention of obliterating, and they say it, the mullahs in Iran saying it clearly that they're here to take out, to annihilate the Jewish state. They're saying it. So you've got to believe them when they're saying it, like when people didn't believe Hitler when he was saying what he was planning to do. But they're saying that was their intention. So while they're building, they know that Israel is afraid to attack their nuclear sites. Why? Because the moment they give a thumbs up to Nasrallah, he unleashes hell on Israel. Now, Israel, of course, can pummel Hezbollah like you see they're doing now. They can pummel them, but while they're doing it, with trying not to kill millions of civilians, again, they can't fight a war where they can't care because the world will slaughter them. We see what the world does to Israel, even when Israel is acting with incredible restraint. But if Israel needs to, for its very life, fight back, it would still have to do so cautiously. Meanwhile, Hezbollah would rain down these arrows of death and kill. I'm afraid to even imagine what kind of death toll would be in Israel. There was in 2006 when the Hezbollah had a round with Israel, and a lot of Jews were hurt. A lot of Jews were killed. It was horrible. And from 2006, you know how much they armed themselves? You know how stronger they were? And here came the stunning miracle. Because when Israel disrupted their communication systems by blowing up two things, blowing up their communication and blowing up their entire chain of command through the brilliant, you cannot say less than a divine given gift that God had given them the opportunity to do this, to sell Hezbollah their pagers and walkie-talkies, and injure and maim at least 3,000 terrorists. But these were not the foot soldiers. These are all the commanders. When Israel took them out, and the next day with the walkie-talkies, that was like unbelievable. That's like incredible. The miracle of it. In one blow, it shook the entire Arab world. It shook the entire world, but the Arabs across the entire world were stunned by the genius of it. And immediately after, Israel was able to go after the rest and take out the head of the Radwan forces. Strike one, strike two, strike three, take down the entire chain of command until they got Nasrallah himself. Now, a threatening force that was there for 40 years and built itself stronger and stronger should be taken down in less than 2 weeks is absolutely a miracle that one day we will only learn about the miracles and how God assisted Israel in this attack. Hezbollah is no more a fighting force. Yes, of course, they have missiles and they have things, and Israel is continuing bombing and eliminating their power. But this is stunning. Absolutely stunning. And if we're looking for a messianic event where God goes out to fight the war, this time together with his children, I think it's just, it's amazing. You can interpret it however you want, but to me this is an act of God together with his children. But then here's what the Zohar continues, which I think is even more fascinating. The Zohar says, now I do want to say, and I'm going to stop over here in the middle of the Zohar. Let's talk about what else, because if this is all really a prediction of the Zohar, that a 70-day period of incredible events that are going to prelude the coming of Mashiach. I'm not saying Mashiach is coming in 70 days. You know why I'm not saying that? Because 70 days is way too late. The Mashiach has to be here now. So I'm not okay saying, 70 days from now it's going to happen. No, now. This is what the Rebbe taught us. Now. Not in a minute. Now. The Rebbe said, we want Mashiach now. So I'm not a predictor. I'm just sharing with you a passage of the Zohar, which the Zohar is prophetic, and it's interesting when we see this happening. It's hard to ignore. Now let's hope we don't have to wait no 70 days. Any case, but let's talk about what happened, not what is about to happen. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know what happened. Iran, twice this year, sent The first time, over 300 missiles, UAVs, drones, who knows what. A vicious attack against Israel. And again last week, 181 missiles flying over the Western Wall. You see you see picture videos of that? Jews dancing at the Western Wall while these missiles are coming over, knowing that God is protecting them. How in the world is it possible? How in the world is it possible that a country is shooting 180 ballistic missiles and not one Jew, not one God, not one Jew is killed? Not one. One Palestinian Arab was killed in Israel. Good, you have good systems. You have good systems. You have the day, do you realize that these systems have to work impeccably, in an impeccable manner? 3 systems. And every system always makes mistakes. I forgot the 3 systems that there are. There is the Iron Dome, there is the other system, the arrow, arrow something, and there's David Sling, I think. These are the 3 systems. And they all work on different range missiles. But the fact that they were all activated and all did their job, it's not they did it. There is no question in my mind that thousands of angels were standing over Israel, protecting those Israel from catching and blowing them up in the sky. Of course, with and through camouflaged in these missile defense systems. Well, it's the same Torah portion, the same Haftorah, the same in Isaiah 63, the same passage that we spoke about, how God will do vengeance against the nations in the world when time will come. In that same place, it says in the Haftorah, Al Choy Moisayach Yerushalayim, on your walls, Jerusalem, I have placed, God says, on the walls of Jerusalem, I have placed, hold on, let me get it to you. Yeah, Al-Choy Messiah Yerushalayim, on your walls of Jerusalem, Hifkadati Shomrim, I have appointed guards. These are guardian angels that God is protecting Israel. Make no mistakes. You are watching miracles of biblical proportion. These are great experts have said that the miracles that are happening in Israel are as great as the miracles that happened in the Red Sea. As great as the miracles happened when the sea split, as great as the 10 plagues that came down on Egypt. I mean, it's spectacular. And again, I believe we're just at the beginning. This is divine revelation. And that means we're living in messianic times, because exile is a time of divine concealment. No, October 7th, that was a moment, that was a last crumb of exile. It was concealment. People ask, where was God on that day? That's exile. Redemption is God's revelation. We're seeing revelation. The Zohar continues, and I found this also very interesting, and that will lead us to the third part, which I think is really the third thing that I'm thinking is like unbelievable. The Zohar says that as this star will, now let me tell you a little bit about the star. The star made his way. Now, if you wanted to see the star on September 27th, you had to be in the southern hemisphere. Countries next to the equator were able to see it quite brightly on the morning close to the morning of the 27th of September. Now, again, I don't know if this is the star. I'm just finding that it's interesting because NASA is talking about, the astronomers are talking about this amazing star on that day. And it's going to be very bright. Now, by the way, today I realized that there's 2 stars they're talking about, 2 comets that are like going to be very bright in the month of October. Now this star is going to kind of like, is fading a little bit. You can't see it because it went very close to the sun, so you can't see it. And it's re-emerging again on October 12th. And this time it's going to emerge to the people in the northern hemisphere. And people, they say in the Kentucky skies, it's going to be so powerful, so bright. And I drive to Kentucky. Moshiach star. But what's cool? October 12th. October 12th is Yom Kippur. We know Yom Kippur is the day that the essence is revealed. The reason we're forgiven is the essence of our soul is revealed. And God forgives because when he sees the essence, there is no sin. There is no darkness. The essence of the soul. The essence of the soul, the collective essence of all Jewish souls, that's Moshiach. Moshiach's soul, he's the essence. So Yom Kippur is Moshiach's day. The day of the revelation of the essence. So the fact that on the northern hemisphere, this star is going to come out brightly is pretty predictive to the Zohar. Now the Zohar seems to be saying that the star will kind of disappear and come back. And then when it will be seen, when it will expand and be seen in the world again, the next time, then it will expand. In other words, it seems like it will be back, out, and in. And at that time, watch this. Big wars will happen in the world. I don't know what's going to happen with Iran. I'm not sure with Russia and Ukraine. I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen. L'chol arba sitrin in the four directions. Let's hope that all of this doesn't have to occur in the physical sense. We have enough bloodshed. I'm just telling you what it says in the Zohar. And then it says, Ubemtsas alman, in the middle of the world. When that star will sparkle in the middle of the sky. Now, the middle of the world can mean the center of civilization, the most prominent place in the world. Can I guess that might be the United States of America? Because it's the most, it's where the UN is, it's where the Big Apple is, it's the center of the world economy, it's the center of, I think so, it's fair to say. What does the Zohar say? Yukum Malkachad, will rise a king, Rav, great one, the Shalit Ba'alma, who will rule the world. The Yizgar Ruche, and his spirit will be, he will pride himself. Al Kol Malchan, on all kings. The Yisar Kravim Betrein Sitin, and it will cause wars on two sides. The Yizgaber Alayo, but he will prevail over them. So what can that mean? Can I make a prediction? I don't know. But November 5th is in this time that the star is supposed to be out. Now, according to the astronomers I was looking, it doesn't seem like it's going to last all the way into November. I'm not sure. But it's very interesting. But again, according to the Zohar, it's a 70-day period. So the 70-day period goes all the way close to December. So November 5th is right in the smack in the middle of this period of time. There is an election. A king will rise who will be very... Okay, I'm not making you decide who you think is who's this individual. It characterizes him as a strong person, not as a weak person, not as someone who's saying everything that everybody wants to hear to try to make everybody happy. But someone who's a character. Someone who's a little arrogant. Who will pride himself. Now the Zohar, it's interesting. The Zohar does not say whether this is a good person or a bad person. It just says there will be a king. And he will prevail over. Then the Zohar goes on to predict that in the end of the 70 days, I'm just telling you what's going to happen, the land of Israel will have a massive shaking that will take place around the Temple Mount, the place of the Beis Hamikdash, the Zohar says. It will shake and quake for 45 mil, which probably is about a 30-mile radius around Jerusalem. And it will open up a cave in which a fire will go forth that would seek to destroy the world. And then this massive bird will come flying out with wings that will be spectacular, and to him kingship will be given. In other words, the bird, that's Moshiach. So, I understand, and I don't have to tell you, that the Zohar is cryptic. A lot of statements in the Zohar are not meant to be understood in the literal sense. When an event happens already, we can interpret it. Seems like it happened, but predict what's going to happen, I don't know. I just find that it's pretty interesting that the election is going to take place in a month from now, and we know it's a very, very, very crucial election. Which leads me to the last part, which is the reason I gave this entire class. Because whatever I said till now, you can hear from other rabbis. What I'm going to say now is what you other rabbis will not tell you. But you heard it on your favorite channel. So today in the morning, former President Donald Trump took a visit. It was on October 7th. And obviously, for some reason, it's very interesting, which I don't really understand. I can't explain it rationally. He is obsessed with the Jewish vote. He doesn't stop harping on it. You notice that? He is extremely frustrated that he believes he's been the best president for Israel. I believe so as well. He's done incredible things, yet the stubborn Jews don't want to give him their vote. Obviously, he's talking about most of the secular Jews. A lot of them that are very liberal-minded and hate Trump like as he was Satan himself. And my point of my class now is not to be political. I'm not, everybody's entitled to their opinions. I have my opinion. Everybody can have their opinion. That's not the issue. But I'm really interested in the fact that Trump is so obsessed with the Jewish vote. He doesn't stop harping. He keeps on bringing his frustration. Like he feels betrayed by the Jewish people. And yet, he keeps on saying that he's going to support Israel in an enormous way, unlike the people in charge now who are telling Israel that they should not take out Iran. Let's try to understand the logic over here. Israel has been enormously successful. Iran is this menace, this evil that is never going to be. They're not coming to a table and changing their minds. You're not going to talk to them and give them lollipops and say, "Oh, well, let's make nice." They're not those. These are extreme Islamists that are going to die for their 72 versions. Right? This is what they're dreaming of. And they're dead bent on the Islamic Caliphate. So who in their right mind? So what are we going to wait for? We're going to wait 30 years from now until they will be a superpower, until they'll be untouchable, that they'll have nuclear. So Israel has a chance to take them out now, seconds before they're going to have nuclear power. And these dumbbells in Washington tell Israel, are trying to rein Netanyahu, and don't. They attacked, Israel has a chance now. They attacked Israel in the most vicious attack with 180 rockets. They're not planning. You realize if one of those rockets would go through one of them and hit an apartment building, there would be, God forbid, 300, 400, 500 dead. God forbid. There could be. Israel has all the right to go in there and take out their nuclear power, to take out their oil fields. And Israel has the capabilities to do so. And now they're on the run. And now the threat of Hezbollah is not there anymore. Trump is saying, go ahead. Take them out. But it's interesting, as I mentioned, he's so positive for Israel. He's bothered so much that Jews don't tell him thank you, are not being supportive enough. And I have a whole theory about that because it has to do with discussions that I've had on this channel years ago. Those of you who are new in the channel don't know, but I've been talking a lot about this many years ago, in which I've shared with you many times that, to me, I think Trump is a biblical figure, a biblical figure, and a reincarnation of somebody we know very familiar in the Bible known as Esau, the brother of Yaakov. He has all the signs of it, and just like Esau was very bothered that Jacob, like Yaakov, didn't support him, like he always felt like Jacob is taking away something from him. You find that in Trump. It's very interesting. He's like, but at the same time, he's the biggest ally to the Jewish people. So what was astounding was that today, on October 7th, he wants to show solidarity with the Jewish people. So he had an event in Mar-a-Lago, I think, in honoring the October 7th. I didn't follow up on the news. It happened later. I was trying to prepare this class. But before that, he decided that the one place he's going to go to in order to show solidarity with the Jewish people was to go to the Lubavitcher Rebbe resting place in Queens, known as the Ohel. The Ohel is where the Rebbe Menachem Mendel Schneerson, known as the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the seventh Rebbe, after his, and I struggle always when I have to say this, because to me the Rebbe is alive. I'm going to say it, I'm not embarrassed to say it, the Rebbe is alive. I believe he's even not only spiritually alive, but physically alive as well. Because it says about Moshiach, that Moshiach will be lifted up to Gan Eden, spirit, physical, body. Now there was a funeral, and I know, and there was a thing, okay? So God has different ways of when he wants to sneak someone out of here, there's a lot of ways he can do it. And I believe that the place of the Ohel is very holy. The previous Rebbe is there, and maybe some element of the Rebbe is also there. I know for sure the Rebbe goes there to pick up his mail every day, because all the people come to the Rebbe to turn to him, and the Rebbe definitely goes. And I'm sure the Friediger Rebbe, I'm sorry for being, tells the Rebbe, here you've got mail, and he gives the Rebbe all in. I know the Rebbe is above death. That's what I know. Now, for those of you who want to insist differently, you can insist whatever you want. I have enough Torah sources to believe that certain tzaddikim don't die. I'm not going to go through them with you now, and I don't have to apologize for my belief. So to me, the Rebbe is not. So I have a hard time saying, but there's for sure some element of the Rebbe that's in Queens, and millions of Jews from across the world visit the Rebbe, hundreds of thousands every year. And people go to pray, and miracles flow there without an end. Without an end. Miracles flow. Unbelievable. Now, in the recent months, we've seen something really interesting. Argentinian president, what's his name? Javier Milei, who's a Trump-like type of populist who won the vote, became president of Argentina just about a year ago, maybe less. Every time he comes to the United States, he just came to give a UN speech, visits the Rebbe in Queens, and he goes there to pray. He credits his winning of the election in Argentina to his prayers at the Rebbe's resting site. The other one who, and just a few weeks ago, but at the same time, the prime minister or the president of, I think, Albania, I don't know his name, you can look it up, also came to the Lubavitcher Rebbe's resting place to pray. 2 weeks ago, the day before Netanyahu Israel attacked Nasrallah, Netanyahu gave his speech Friday morning. Thursday night, Netanyahu's wife, the first lady of Israel, the first Sarah Netanyahu, went with a whole delegation to the Rebbe's Ohel to pray for Israel, for the success. Today in the morning, President Trump's motorcade drove up to the Ohel, and President Trump went in to offer prayers, wearing a kippah, black kippah. They gave him a present, the book of Psalms, and he prayed. He did what is tradition that everybody does, to write a note. He read the note. I don't know what was written in that note. Whether he spoke to his friend Javier Milei, and Javier Milei convinced him that it would be a good idea that he should go visit the Rebbe. It's interesting that for 6-7 years I've been feeling very strongly that, especially after 2020 and Trump's being pushed out of the White House, and I was very I personally, again, these are my own political views, I feel that he's a blessing for the world and he needs to be there. Not that I agree with him on everything, but this is my own, again, this is not, don't mix it with the Torah that I'm teaching. If you don't like the political policies and you think he's the bad for the world, dismiss what I'm saying. You don't have to agree with me. I don't have to agree with you on everything. So we can disagree on some things. Okay? Let's be friends and disagree. And fine, we can be friends. Today's such a crazy world that if you have different opinions, you can't hug each other and love each other. Why? We're all created with different minds. We have different appeals, things we like, things we dislike. To some people, Donald Trump gives them a rash. And I don't blame them. They have an allergic reaction. They can't stand his personality. They can't. Okay, it's fine. And I'm okay with that. But I was always of the thing that I wanted him to win. And I always figured that he should go to the Rebbe. He has to go to the Rebbe to ask for a blessing. But it's really interesting because you'd wonder, why in the world does he go to the Lubavitch Rebbe? And why the October 7th? Now, you can say, he's looking to do a campaign stop to get the Jewish vote. But you need to know something about Chabad Lubavitch. Chabad Lubavitch has to stay out of politics. Chabad Lubavitch is not allowed to be. The Rebbe never endorsed a candidate. The official Chabad establishment and the official organization has to stay neutral. And it's very simple. Chabad has thousands of donors on both sides of the aisle. Many Chabad houses don't know what to do. The rabbis are really they have to close their mouth when it comes to politics, because no matter what they're going to say, someone in their shul is going to get offended. Some people are staunch Trumpists, and other people are strong anti-Trumpists, and you can't have an organization supported by Chabad. Needs to be supported by all every Chabad rabbi has to do his own fundraising to support their activities, and you can't. And even more than the fundraising, it's a job of the Rebbe appointed his emissaries to inspire Jews. And if for political reasons Jews will not come to your shul because they don't agree to your opinions, that's a problem. And therefore, the Chabad will never come out, the official, and endorse Trump, even if people private opinion is they love him or whatever, they're not going to do so. So it's not even gaining much politically if he goes to the Rebbe. What is he going to gain? And it wasn't like he got there to 1,000. It was a rally. Trump loves rallies. We know that he loves rallies. It wasn't a big rally. It was a very private event. He went there, solemnly prayed, spoke to a few people. What's the reason for this? Now, his daughter Ivanka and his son-in-law Jared Kushner, a night before the 2016 election, they went to pray for his success. So I don't know the human reason. Maybe some people convinced him. I don't know. But I can tell you the spiritual higher reason that I believe he went. It says so in Psalms. Psalm 72. It talks about Moshiach. And it says like this. Let me read for you. It talks about how the king, this Psalm 72 is all about Moshiach. For Solomon, O God, impart your justice to the king. This is referring, according to most commentaries, this is Moshiach. And your righteousness to the son of the king. May he judge your people with righteousness, your poor with justice. May the mountains bear peace to the nation, also the hills in reward of their righteousness. May he judge the nation's poor, save the children of the destitute, and crush the oppressor, so that they will fear you as long as the sun shines and the moon endures, generation after generation. May his words descend like rain upon cut grass, like raindrops that water the earth. In his days may the righteous flourish with much peace until the moon is no more. And may he rule from sea to sea and from the river until the ends of the earth. May nobles kneel before him, and may his enemies lick the dust. The kings of Tarshish and the islands will return tribute. The kings of Sheba and Seba will offer gifts. All kings will bow to him, all nations will serve him. Let me read to you from the book of Isaiah, chapter 11 in Isaiah, talking about Moshiach. Chapter 11, verse number 10. It will be on that day, Shoresh Yishai, the root of Jesse. Yishai is Jesse, the grandfather, the father of King David. That means Moshiach, who comes from Yishai. Asher Oymed, who stands Lenes Amim, as a banner for nations. There will be a banner, a waving flag, which will shine so that people, and watch this, Elov Goyim Yidroishu, to him nations will seek out his counsel. V'hoisa menuchasoi kavoid, and his resting place will be to great glory. It's talking about how the nations will all come to Mashiach Tzidkenu. They will flock to him. But it's interesting, it says his resting place will be covered. So the regular commentaries say that he will be, that even though he won't fight wars, because in his days there will be reign and peace, it won't be a sign of weakness, it will be covered, it will be honorable. That's the meaning of his resting. But today I found out a new meaning in it. This is my own interpretation, I didn't see it anywhere. There will be a time that Moshiach will be in a state, Shoresh Yisha. He will be like a root that's still in the ground, ready to sprout forth. During that time, there will be a resting place. And that resting place will have a banner on the roof, which will attract kings and nations. Possibly the person who was the most powerful person in the world just a few years ago. And like Trump, or don't like Trump, he was a ruler, a president that the world feared. He wasn't a joke. Possibly someone who in a month from now, literally in a month from now, might be again the ruler of the entire free world, comes to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. On the 7th of October, you know why? The 7th of October was an attack on the Jewish people. Who do you go to show solidarity to? The leader of the Jewish people. Netanyahu was not the leader of the Jewish people. Netanyahu has a role. He's a prime minister of modern Israel. He's not the leader of the Jewish people. A leader of the Jewish people is the one who's in charge over the Jewish people. There is no question that the leader of the Jewish people is the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He's the only person in the last 100 years who took responsibility for all the Jewish people. He's the only person, I think, in the last 1,000 years who took responsibility for the entire period. I mean, people can take responsibility, but they didn't activate their responsibility. The Rebbe activated his responsibility to the entire world. And to this very day, all the Jewish people have someone caring for them, and that's the Rebbe. Because he has emissaries across the entire world, including my son, who just moved to the most furthest, remote, northernmost place in the world, freezing cold, to take care of 1,000 Jews that are there. And this Rosh Hashanah, he had 30 Jews that gathered together, maybe more, maybe like 60 Jews, who passed through his new Chabad house. Because in the prophecies it says that when the time of redemption comes, the Jews will come from the north. And particularly puts out the north. We read it on Rosh Hashanah, on the Haftorah of Rosh Hashanah. It says that God, when it talks about Kibbutz Galus, the gathering, it says the Jews from the north. I got excited because my son is in the north. He's the most northern Chabad in the entire world. Who's looking after the Jews across the world? I have two boys, one boy that I spoke today on the phone. I asked them, how was it? They went to spend Rosh Hashanah in Florida. They're from New York. I mean, actually the boy's from Chicago, but he went to New York. He went for the holidays to Florida, to a place. I thought that he was going to hang out in a parking lot of a prison, because that's where they were last time. And he spent Rosh Hashanah 3 days in Florida without a shul, without a minyan, without, every Jew, because there are Jews in prison who need to hear shofar, who need to be welcomed and celebrate the new year. And these Jews have been forgotten by everybody, besides one person. The Lubavitcher Rebbe cared about the Jews that are in prison, the criminals. Some of them, not the nicest people. The Lubavitcher Rebbe cares about every single Jew across the world. And it's not like he cared, he cares now in the current. Because his organization, his ambassadors are all over the world, and they are just as fresh and devoted and dedicated as when the Rebbe was physically alive. And every day they get fresher and more powerful and more dedicated and more devoted to his infinite and boundless love and to his message of light to the entire world. So the Rebbe is the leader of the Jewish people today, without a question. Netanyahu, who is now becoming a fearless leader of Israel. I mentioned earlier the biggest miracle in Israel was that Netanyahu actually did it. You know what? Israel has for years been terrified of world opinion. For Israel to go out and do what they did took enormous, what we call in Judaism, we call it chutzpah, tremendous brazenness, and couldn't care less what anybody thinks. Who gave Netanyahu that strength? Who empowered him to do that? Ask Netanyahu, he'll tell you. 40 years ago, it's going to be 40 years on Simchas Torah, which is coming up October, whatever. I'm not sure the date this year. It's the first anniversary on the Hebrew calendar of the massacre of what happened in Israel that happened on Simchat Torah. 40 years ago, exactly, in 1985. Sorry, it was 1984. But it was the Hebrew year 5745. Now it's 5785. On Simchat Torah, young Benjamin Netanyahu was then the new ambassador to the UN from Israel, the new Israeli ambassador. And he, together with a fellow by the name of Alon Baker, came to the Rebbe on Simchat Torah when the Rebbe was leading dancing. Now, anybody that ever saw the Rebbe, Rebbe by Hakafas, anybody that ever saw, merited to see the dancing. Thousands, tens of thousands of cramped into that room. And everybody focused on the Rebbe. And the Rebbe holding the Torah literally like a king. And leading those dancing. The energy in the room is like, you've never seen anything like it. And the holiness. And the levels of spirituality that the Rebbe has reached. This is after Rosh Hashanah, after Yom Kippur. Higher and higher to the peaks, And here comes in a new Israeli politician that is a nobody. No one really knows who he is. He's a new guy on the block. In Chabad, they knew that he was coming because they were, and I guess with permission of the Rebbe or the Rebbe, they brought him up onto the stage. He stood on the side and he was wowed by the thousands of people. He was very taken. He'll describe it to you. Find out. Ask him. He's even made, but I saw a writing of the person who was with him. Alon Baker is his name. He was something in the UN. The Rebbe then turns to Netanyahu and watch this. This is unbelievable. Spoke to him for 40 minutes. 40 minutes. Unheard of that the Rebbe would stop the dancing and talk to someone for 40 minutes. And the room is like packed with people and everybody's waiting for the dancing. And the Rebbe stops his holy service to God on the holiest moment and is talking to an young Israeli politician who is not even religious. You know what the Rebbe spoke to him? At that time, Israel was then in Lebanon, South Lebanon, and they were preparing to withdraw their troops from Lebanon. And the Rebbe felt it was a huge mistake. And the Rebbe, of course, is right. Because Israel withdrew and left an empty space. And who came to fill that place? Hezbollah. So the Rebbe was then talking to Netanyahu and telling him that he must speak to Shamir, who was then the president of Israel, Yitzchak Shamir, and tell him that he should not leave Lebanon at all. And the Rebbe kept on repeating one thing, the word again, that Israel has to deal with the terrorists biyad chazaka ubizroya netuya, which means with a powerful hand and an outstretched arm, not flinch. Because when you will be strong, your enemies will be afraid, and there will be peace for you and for the enemies. And Netanyahu asked the Rebbe, but there's so much pressure in the UN. There's so much pressure from Washington. And there's so much pressure from the European countries. And the Rebbe said, don't pay attention to the pressure from America. Don't pay attention to this. Don't reckon with the Gentiles, the Rebbe said. Don't reckon at all with the nations of the world. Do what you need to do for the safety of the Jewish people. And the world will respect you. 40 years today, 39 years before the October 7th atrocities that happened on Simchas Torah, 40 years, and I believe Netanyahu finally woke up. And the Rebbe's words that the Rebbe told him is the spirit that is driving him now to be strong and work. I can't even imagine the pressure that this person has to go through. He has to completely rely on God. America is an important friend, ally of Israel. But he has to believe that God is backing him. He has to have enormous faith, because you're risking your relationship with the United States of America if you ignore Biden and you ignore Kamala Harris or whatever. And yet he's doing it. So who's the leader of the Jewish people? Okay, so you'll say he's the leader of the Jewish people, but to claim that the Rebbe is Moshiach, that's a... So I'm going to ask you, they have all these rabbis talking about Mashiach and that the time of redemption and pointing to all the signs, but no one has turned up a Mashiach. Where is the Mashiach? Everything is being led by a Mashiach. Where is the Mashiach? I want to know. No one wants to talk. No one is going to say. So I'm going to tell you. The Rebbe spoke about this. The Rebbe himself spoke about this the first 35 years ago, 33, 34 years ago, where the Rebbe clearly stated in all of his talks, 2 years before the Rebbe had a stroke, especially the last year, the Rebbe went week after week after week, telling us that year, 1991, is the year that Mashiach is being revealed in the world. The Rebbe connected it to major events that were taking place in the world and said that Moshiach is now being revealed in the world. And the Rebbe didn't leave much for the imagination of who he's referring to. He kept on repeating again and again that the leader of the generation is Moshiach. And the Rebbe keeps on referring to his father-in-law, who the Rebbe never ever spoke about himself. The Rebbe spoke about himself as sitting on his father-in-law's seat, but it's all his father-in-law. The Rebbe said, my father-in-law, the Rebbe, referring to himself, because the Rebbe always speaks about his father-in-law, because the Rebbe is complete self-effacement, speaks about his father-in-law, who's the previous Rebbe, as the leader of the generation, and who is, in the words of the Rebbe, the only Mashiach. And the Rebbe said, he has already been revealed in the world. The Rebbe repeated many times, his name is Menachem, which happens to be the Rebbe's name. The Rebbe said the gematria of 770 is Beis Mashiach. The Rebbe says that when it says about Mashiach, Ufaratzta, that he will burst through and break all the barriers and bring godliness to the entire world. The Rebbe said that's numeric value of 770, his address. These are just dropping hints. And there are many, many more. But more than all of that, there are about 5 talks which you cannot, if you're honest and you're real, you cannot learn them and claim the Rebbe did not say he is Moshiach. I'll tell you which ones. I'll tell you 2 of them. One is called Beis Rabbeinu Shebebavel. The theme over there is that the 3rd temple is first going to reveal itself in Brooklyn, New York, in the house of the Beis Hamikdash of the Jewish people during the time of exile, because it's the leader of the Jewish people. The Rebbe is specifically speaking about 770. And that's where Moshiach is at the time of the redemption. So you learn that talk. It's impossible not to see what he's saying. And the other one is Parshas Mishpatim. I'm talking about the most explicit ones. There are so many that are so powerful. In a talk, Parshas Mishpatim, the Rebbe was talking about when Russia, the United States, England, and other countries made a pact to denuclearize, to begin the process of denuclearization. The Rebbe saw that as the beginning of a new messianic era when the plowshares will be turned when the weapons will be turned to plowshares. And the Rebbe said, who is the one that's making these events happen? What's affecting it? What's driving it? The Rebbe says it's because Mashiach is already revealed in the world. And the reason why it's happening in New York City, even though the Rebbe says, the simple reason is because that's where the UN building is. But why is the UN building in New York? Is because that's where the leader of the generation, the Moshiach of the generation lives. And since Moshiach is already revealed in the world, you're seeing already messianic events taking place. The world is changing for Moshiach. So to me, there is absolutely no question who the Rebbe is, what he said. If you don't want to rely only on the Lubavitcher Rebbe, we can take out a Maimonides, the book of Rambam, and see what is Mashiach all about. And then you see the only one who fits the bill is the Rebbe. The only one. Mashiach is a kingly figure. That means he has followers who follow him like a king. Not through force, but that look up to him he has a certain, it's not just a charisma, but a certain energy that energizes a people to be utter selfless for him. It's a king, and Rambam goes on to explain that he wages the wars of God, which means he fights for the Jewish people and for their safety. Who is the only voice in the Jewish world who was thundering and thundering and thundering again and again and again that Israel is making the biggest mistake when they begin to negotiate land for peace? Because the moment they do that, they're strengthening the Arabs, they're strengthening the terrorists, because then they realize that you're scared of them and you're weak. And you're going to end up paying a terrible, heavy price. The Rebbe cried his soul out, week after week, his heart out, literally from 770, crying and crying and crying and thundering. And the Rebbe pushed Israeli politicians, but they had deaf ears. They didn't want to listen because they were more afraid of the Gentiles than of the true Jewish king. They tried to appease the Gentiles of the world, thinking that the world will love Israel if only Israel would make concessions. Turns out that and at that time people thought the Rebbe was an extremist, the Rebbe was a militant. Turns out that everybody in Israel today agrees that the Rebbe is right. The Oslo Accords, which was led to October 7th, and we cooked ourselves a dish that now we're eating. A poisonous dish, because we did not listen to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. That's called fighting the wars of God. I gave an example. I'll give you another amazing example. It's just like, this is like so amazing. I have this book, it's amazing, called Chassidus. It's 5 volumes of private audiences. I'm just beginning to dabble in it. There is a fellow by the name of Tzvi Kaspi. He was a big diplomat in Misrad HaChutz. Misrad HaChutz is called Foreign Affairs Ministry in Israel. And he was also in the Council of New York. I don't know exactly what his position was. I didn't get a chance. He was at the Rebbe at Yechidus. You know when? In 1968. You want to talk about a person who had a far look? The Rebbe is telling him in a private audience. This is what he recorded. The Rebbe says, you're making a terrible mistake that you're imprisoning terrorists. And you put them into jail. You should kill them, the Rebbe says. You know why? Because these terrorists are coming to kill you. And morally and according to Torah, you have a right to kill them before they kill you. Don't arrest them. Make sure to kill them. He said, because you're going to pay a very heavy price. Because in the future, they're going to come and they're going to start demanding exchanges, hostage exchanges. They're going to want to make exchanges. They're going to take Jewish hostages and ask for exchanges. And then everybody thought this is crazy. You know the mastermind of the entire October 7th? Yahya Sinwar was exchanged because the Netanyahu caved into the pressure. And for one soldier, Gilad Shalit, that was taken hostage by, he exchanged 1,200 terrorists. What did that give us? Death, murder. Not just for the Jews. It killed thousands of Gazans. And what do they want today? What is it? These ridiculous people in Washington want to shove down Israel's throat. Make a ceasefire. Exchange hostages. What are we, out of your mind? This is exactly what's going to happen. So then they'll take hostages again, so then you can get their prisoners out. Then you can send in terrorists. The terrorists are not afraid because they know they're in a revolving door. They're going into jail. 5 years later, they're going to be released because we'll take more hostages. And Jews have very soft hearts. They're going to want to get their hostages back. So the Rebbe says, don't take terrorists. Who in the world had foresight? The Rebbe is 100% accurate on every single thing. Rambam says there is going to be a man who's going to fight the wars of God. Since when do you have a religious leader, a great Torah scholar? Now the Rambam, by the way, before that says that this Moshiach has to be, he's not a military person, he's a Torah scholar. That means he's someone who studies Torah day and night. He's someone who is meticulous in mitzvah observance and someone who spreads mitzvah observance across to all the Jewish people. Find me one other person who does that. Nobody. Now, the Rebbe inspired many other Jewish organizations to do outreach, to reach Jews and do mitzvahs with them. This is insane that for 30 years, we, Lubavitchers and others who know who the Rebbe is, we're afraid to stand up and say what I'm telling you right now. This is so clear. I'm telling you right now because I know any second Mashiach is coming, so I'm covered. Although I'm going to be very embarrassed of the Rebbe and I'm going to run as far as I can. I have already a hiding place, but he'll probably find me. Because I feel very guilty that I did not speak forcefully all this time. I speak a little here and there, but I'm uncomfortable, I'm afraid. But you know what? It's time. It's over. We're living at the time of revelation. We're living at the time of Gilui. So you're going to say, but the Rebbe passed away. But okay, with all you can tell me stories. He didn't pass. That's your own imagination. You're going to tell me. So how can the Rebbe pass away? Or how can he, Moshiach? So the advantage I have over all my critics is that I actually have the books, and I have the actual statements over here. In Shir HaShirim, take a look, my dear friends. In Medrash Rabbah. This is in Perek Beis in Shir HaShirim. My beloved is compared to a deer. Matzvi zeh, just like this deer, nira he appears v'chayzev v'nichsa, and then he is hidden. Nira he appears v'chayzev v'nichsa, and then he goes into hiding again. When you watch a deer, Sometimes a deer, if you ever go camping, you see a deer in the forest. It's there and then suddenly it disappears. And then you see it completely in a different place. It peeks out. It catches you by surprise. You see it with its antlers. It's so beautiful, a deer. Like a gazelle. You see it and it's gone. And then suddenly it's back again. Because it's so quick. So the Midrash says, so too the Redeemer, Goyal Arishon, the first Redeemer. He appeared, Moshe appeared to the Jewish people. He then became concealed again. And then he reappeared. And the Midrash asks how long he disappeared for. And the Midrash says, Kach goyel achron, so too the latter Redeemer. Nigla lahem, he is revealed to them. V'choyze v'nichsa lahem, and then he is hidden from them. V'kamon nichsa mehem, and how long? The Midrash says 45 days. It's been way longer than 45 days that the Rebbe is not with us. So if you would argue the Rebbe would disappear for 45 days, Moshiach will. But again, the Midrash says that Moshiach will reveal. He will then be hidden from the Jewish people. He will be revealed again. Well, let me share with you this Rashi. I hate quoting this Rashi, but I am going to quote it anyways because I have no choice. This is the Rashi. You can look it up for those of you who are going to be listening to this class the first time. Meaning those who didn't hear me say this, I quoted this many times. Rashi chapter 12, verse 12 in Daniel. Rashi is the great commentator on the... It says in the verse, fortunate are the people who don't give up hope. Ashrei hamachaka, when the time of the redemption comes and it's not happening. You think it's going to happen, it's not happening, and it's eluding you, and you're waiting, and it didn't happen. And you're ready to throw in the towel and give up hope. Ashrei hamachaka, fortunate are those who do not give up hope. V'yagia, and they arrive to that lucky day, that beautiful moment. So Rashi says, what is this referring to? This particular verse is referring to Arbaim v'chamei shanim, 45 years, Noisafim al cheshbon elyon, more than what we said before, Sha'asid mishichenu lehiskasos, that our Moshiach will be hidden, achar shenigla, after he's revealed. Rashi doesn't say 45 days. Rashi says 45 years. V'yashav v'yizgal. Now, I am 100% going to say that it doesn't have to be the full 45, and I'm sure it's not based on everything that's going on. We're over 30 already, and God, I think, is running out of patience because the nations of the evil in the world has done more than Moshiach is about to reveal himself. But the fact that a long time passes in between is not against the Torah. That's all I'm saying. It fits very well. And the fact that in these last 30 so years since the Rebbe has been hidden from us, against the predictions of everybody that Chabad would crumble and they would fall apart and they would... Chabad didn't crumble. It only became stronger. Today, everybody reveres the Rebbe. Everybody sees his Torah. And those who don't are sadly losing out because there's no Torah like the Torah of the Rebbe. There's no brilliant depth like the Rebbe's Torah. Everybody knows that anything the Rebbe touches becomes so bright with such an incredible, with so much nuance and layers of meaning and depth. The Rebbe brings such light to the Torah that is incredible. And today's days, the world is opening up their eyes. The worlds are beginning to see who the Rebbe is. The world is beginning to see it. Well, most people are not comfortable saying what I'm saying. But what I'm telling you is I'm not guessing. I'm not telling you this as a probability. I am convinced 1,000% that the Rebbe is Moshiach, and there's not even a question and the shadow of a doubt And if you want to know the reason why Trump and all these people are coming to him is because subconsciously everybody already knows it. Netanyahu and Trump and everybody is... The Hisgalus of Moshiach is beginning to reveal himself in the world now. And you're just watching the beginning. So right before the share, I'll share with you something which I wasn't sure if I'm going to share. So right before today's class, I was understandably a little bit uncomfortable because whenever I have to speak about so openly, and I have a lot more to say, but we're going to have to shut the share for now. I was feeling a little bit, intimidated by giving such a controversial shir and topic, which I don't believe anymore is controversial. It shouldn't be controversial. It's becoming clearer and clearer as day passes. But I want to add one more very important thing. But to me, the most important telling point, it's first of all what the Rebbe said. And I don't think the Rebbe made up stories. And the Rebbe is not, God forbid, wouldn't tell us a lie, God forbid. If he did not hear it directly from God that he is Moshiach, the Rebbe would not say it. And I have to add one more thing. For an entire year, the last year of physically the Rebbe was with us, till 2-3 months before his passing. The Rebbe came out on the porch. You can watch videos of it. And the Chassidim sang a song, Yechi Adonenu, long live our master, our king, Mareinu Rabbeinu Melech HaMashiach, which you don't say only to Mashiach. And the Rebbe stood there and with his holy body shook and encouraged the singing day after day, day after day, day after day. And although the Rebbe suffered a stroke, everybody knows the Rebbe's mind was totally with him. And even if you're an idiot, and I'm going to call for someone who can think that, an idiot that think that the Rebbe didn't have his mind with him and he was just being, if anybody would think that the tzaddik, such a tzaddik, that is the successor of the biggest, he's the line of the 7 Chabad Rebbes who were the pillars of godliness in the world, unlike who were the fighters for the Jewish people, who lit up the world with such light that the world has never seen. The successor of the holy Baal Shem Tov in this world. That the end of this lineage would end up with a person who would, God forbid, make a fool of himself on a porch, and the people would say he's Mashiach, and then it would turn out it wasn't true? Are you out of your mind? That itself is so insane. But we know clearly that the Rebbe, because during that entire year, I got answers. Thousands of people turned to the Rebbe for guidance, and the Rebbe gave clear answers regarding all aspects. And the Rebbe confirmed and allowed that to be sung to him. You know why? Because it's not a question. It's absolute. In 1991 was the first revelation of Mashiach, and then it was concealed. And it's about to be revealed again. But, again, because so many other rabbis that I look up to and that are good people, and people, everybody wants to stay clear of this. People are afraid of this subject. It's taboo, it's this, people are uncomfortable. So I myself was also a little uncomfortable today. But I knew that the time has come, so I said, hey, where is it? So I have a Rebbe app. That means it's an app with which you can choose a random answer from the Rebbe. And I closed my eyes, literally sitting on this chair about 15 minutes before the class, before the first attempt, because we had one attempt on this class that was muted. The mic wasn't working. So before that, I sat here and I closed my eyes and I was like, and I said, there are thousands, hundreds of thousands of people have turned to the Rebbe as the Urim V'Tumim. Urim V'Tumim means you get an answer through opening the Rebbe's books and randomly opening to a page, and you can ask a question. And I don't have to, if it wouldn't work for thousands of people, it wouldn't be so popular. People do it from all across the world. And the miracles that are told are I myself, I can make the hair on your head stand up from how many answers I have gotten that were just impossible to be random. So I did. So, but today's days, I take a shortcut. I don't go to the book. This time, I'll admit, I didn't wash my hands. I didn't put on a gartel like we're supposed to when you turn to it. And just in my head, I said, Rebbe, I am planning to speak very openly today, and I feel like time has come. And I just would like to know if I'm going to do so. If you want me not to talk about it, then be very, very clear with me not to. And I hit random. This letter is from Chelek Hey, the 5th book. It's letter Aleph Taf Ayin Daled. Baruch Hashem Chav Ches Adar. The letter is the 28th day of Adar, Tafshin Yud Beis. Harav Agoyin Avasad V'Chasad Yeshir Elikim. Okay, the Rebbe is addressing Shalom. Shalom Abracha. I am here conveying to you. I'll tell you what I read in this letter, but you can. I am conveying to you, Berchasi, my blessing, Birchas Chag Pesach Kosher v'Sameach, a blessing for the Passover holiday. Should be kosher, and Sameach should be a happy and joyous one. V'asher Hashem Yisbarach Yizakeyu, and God should grant you the merit, L'ntaya b'hamishpuyim shaloi, to plant in the people that are influenced by you. That's you guys, if you're listening to the channel. To plant in those that are influenced by you. Ruach Yirah Shamayim, a spirit of fear of God. V'das es Elokim, and the knowledge of God. Shezeu tachlis Yemois HaMashiach. That's the whole purpose of the days of Mashiach. Asher kulam yedu oisi. Everybody should know me. Lemikatan v'ad godlam. From the youngest to the greatest. Ubemela, and therefore, al kol echad ve'echad me'itanu. Therefore, it's upon every single one of us, lavoid bekivun zeh, to work in this direction, be'yegias nefesh, by toiling with your soul. That means internal spiritual toil, working hard. Ve'yegias basar, and you can sweat your body as well in doing your work to influence them. V'chol ha'roitza l'tar, and anybody that wants to purify, which in addition to mean purify themselves, the Rebbe says, means to purify others, Messiah and Biyada, you're going to get divine assistance to do so. So in the days of Mashiach, everybody will know me, from the biggest to the small, and it's our job to work very hard to do that. Now, the actual context of the verse that the Rebbe is quoting is to know God. Yeah, I just found it interesting, the wording over here, which to me was, from all the letters I could have gotten, this was the letter I got. So I said, okay. It's definitely not telling me not to talk. So my dear friends, I hope that we merit, Bezrat Hashem, to see big miracles. Why is this information important? Because when Moshiach is revealed, I'm going to ask one question, because a lot of people ask me the question many times. They say, okay, when Mashiach comes, we'll all see who it is. What's the difference? So my answer is twofold. Number one, if it wasn't important, why was the Rebbe spending an entire year pointing to himself as Mashiach? Why is that? He should have just spoken that Mashiach is here. He didn't stop. He kept on talking about it, about the Nasi being Mashiach. So obviously there must be a reason it's important. Secondly, and this is a point that I've missed earlier, and I think it's the most important point. We spoke halachically, and I've shared with you some other powerful ideas that are indicating this. But the most important thing is to understand what Moshiach is. Moshiach brings the godliness out. His job is to reveal all the godliness that is hidden. Most of it, the godliness that's hidden in the world, and mostly the godliness that's hidden in our souls, and mostly the godliness that's hidden in the Jewish soul. And what's that? The deepest essence of the soul. To reveal the essence of the Jewish people. How every Jew is really connected to God. That's Moshiach. And therefore, according Kabbalistically, mystically, Moshiach is the collective soul of the Jewish people that inspires and wakes up the Jewish people from inside out. There's never been a person who's done that like the Rebbe. He literally awakens in Jews everywhere. I got to tell you a story. I'm sorry I'm prolonging this. Just to show you the Rebbe's reach, the holiness, the godliness of his ability. And he works through each and every one of us. It's not him. It's about us. It's about every single one of us. And the Rebbe explains in many places that when through the revelation of the general Mashiach, it awakens the spark of Mashiach in each and every one of us. That's why it's important. Because it opens us up to our deepest Mashiach energy that's within us when we recognize Mashiach in the collective Mashiach. And I will add to that. Will anybody in their right mind argue that after Moshe Rabbeinu came to the Jewish people and with the word of God saying that the time of the redemption has arrived, and then he left for a few months, if they had meetings in Mitzrayim, are you going to say that it wasn't important to know that it was Moses? Nah, no one cares. Whoever it is. Well, Moshe came already, and he showed up, and he told you the message. What do you mean it's not important? What I'm arguing is that he came already. He told it to us already, so now of course it's important. But let me tell you a beautiful story. This is a fresh story. I just heard it yesterday. So there's a rabbi in the valley. I'm not going to say any names because I didn't ask him explicitly to say names. But there's a rabbi who runs a Chabad house in the valley. In the California over here, the valley in Los Angeles. And he has a lot of boys with him on Rosh Hashanah. Boys, I mean teenage Chabad boys, who go out, and this is the spirit of the Rebbe, to do mitzvahs with Jews, including Rosh Hashanah, to blow shofar for people. Again, one of the Rebbe's amazing innovations. Who did this? Jews on Rosh Hashanah all cared about themselves, to go hear shofar. But what's with the thousands and thousands of Jews who don't hear shofar? So it's one Lubavitcher Rebbe who sent out boys to stand in front of Trader Joe's when someone is going there to buy popcorn or I don't know what, whatever, and he doesn't even think about Rosh Hashanah. Someone stops him and says, "You're Jewish? Yes, let's blow the shofar." That's incredible. And every year it's more and more people doing it. Anyways, this rabbi sent out a bunch of boys to go spread around the valley and to go, each one had a route. And the rabbi knew of different homes and different people with our people who are potential customers who will listen to the shofar. See, this rabbi told me the story yesterday. One of the boys set off on the route. Maybe there were 2 or 3 places. I'm not sure how many people he had on his route. But then the last person that was on the route was still probably a mile walk or something like that. And the shofar has to be blown before sunset. You can't do it in the evening. It must be done during the daytime. This boy realized that it's getting late. It's going to be night already. It's going to be past sunset. He's going to miss it. So there's no point anymore going to the initial address that he was supposed to go to. Because again, we can't drive. You can only walk. So he wouldn't make it. But he had still maybe 10, 15 minutes before sunset. And he was thinking, who else can he blow shofar for? So he decided to try his luck. This is a Chabad. This is the energy the Rebbe inspired in us. That we ourselves, that every Jew, you feel for every Jew. If there's a possible Jew who can do a mitzvah, you really want to do it. There's no greater joy than getting a Jew to do a mitzvah. So he goes over to an apartment building, and he decided his luck. He goes in. I guess there was a lady by the desk, and he says, "Do you know anybody Jewish over here?" So she pointed to an apartment. I don't know if it was an apartment building or if it was a complex. Anyways, he comes, he knocks on the door, and when they say open this, and he's there. There's an old couple. They come, they turn pale. They jump up, they say, Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet. They were going crazy. He said, "What's going on?" They said, "You didn't understand. We're elderly. Every year we go Rosh Hashanah, but we usually drive. This year, I guess maybe from October, I don't know what it was, we decided, on a holiday, on Rosh Hashanah, you're not allowed to drive. So usually we're not so observant. We go drive to hear the shofar, and we're feeling really bad that we're not hearing the shofar. So we said, you know what, God, if you want us to hear shofar, we would like to hear, I'm sure we're going to be able to make us hear the shofar over here." Elijah the prophet. You see, Moshiach, he's the only one who can send Elijah the prophet everywhere. Because Elijah the prophet comes to announce Mashiach. How does Mashiach arrive? How will Mashiach be known? Through the shofar. Eliyahu Hanavi comes and blows the shofar. Who is the shofar of Eliyahu Hanavi? Every single one who's doing the Rebbe's work to reach out to other Jews. You are the shofar awakening Jews to Mashiach. That's the shofar of Mashiach. And that's Elijah the prophet. So Chevra, that's it. It's time to ready ourselves. It's time to be excited to greet Mashiach. Now that it's already revealed. And Be'ezras Hashem, we will continue seeing miracles and miracles. And from now on, this moment and onward, no more darkness, no more pain, no more suffering, no more concealment, no more death, chas v'shalom, no more injury. God himself should take care of business. Whatever is evil and wicked in this world either should do tshuva, or God knows what to do. Tshuva means repentance. We, the Jewish people, and all the good people in the world that are ready to embrace Mashiach. But my very important message for today is, let's connect ourselves deeper to the Rebbe. connect yourself to God and to holiness, but to Rebbe means to study his Torah. Find his Torah. The Rebbe cares. The Rebbe is not just for again, Moshiach is not just for Jews. He's for non. Also, the first Jewish leader in I don't know how long, who started talking and instructed us to reach out to the nations for the 7 Noahide laws. That's also unheard of. It's not a traditional rabbi. Who cares about the nations? It's Moshiach's job. It's no one else's job. I can go on and on and on. So, this is for Jew and Gentile alike. If you have any requests, you need a blessing, there is an address to turn to. There is a human being that God appointed to channel God's blessings to the entire world. Jew and non-Jew alike. Study the Rebbe's Torah. There are good books. There is a book Towards a Meaningful Life by Rabbi Simon Jacobson for non-Jews that gives you an entire overview of the Rebbe's perspective on lives. There are thousands of classes online from the Rebbe's Torah, from teachings of the Rebbe. Familiarize. Connect yourself. Get to know the great godly light that God is sharing with the world. And this will serve as an introduction for Moshiach to be completely revealed, and he will share with us the greatest light ever. May we see it now.